evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. Some downtown residents and businesses are once again raising concerns, saying they are frustrated with the city's response to a homeless encampment near Front and Spadina. It comes after another tent fire this week at the encampment at Clarence Square Park. As Dale Manukduk reports, neighbors say that's just one on a long list of issues.
Less than 2 weeks into the fall, and the leaves on this tree are almost gone. Not from the changing seasons, but according to Toronto Fire, it could have been from heat or smoke damage. This Monday, crews responded to a tent on fire. It's just one of the many issues, says Margaret Samuel.
Been incidents of aggression, and not just aggression, but also assault against people trying to walk. So it becomes very, not only uncomfortable, but it also becomes dangerous for people who just want to enjoy their neighborhood.
The nearby Soho Hotel says occupancy rates have dipped, coinciding with when the encampment was established 2 years ago.
We've had a woman who took her dog to the park, and some woman came out of one of the tents high and tried to steal her dog from her, pulling on the leash. My friends over at the Clarence Park hostel, they had a front desk where where the clerks was punched in the face by somebody from the encampment. The list goes on.
There are community safety members assigned to the park and 24/7 security, along with an information and help center in this modified shipping container.
Security is just over there avoiding this situation.
Residents say the security is ineffective and would like to see police move in and clear the encampment.
And if you look at the tents and the setups that people have there, you really don't get the feeling that these are people in transition. It looks like these people are here to hunker down and have no intention of going anywhere else, which again I say is illegal.
Since March, Clarence Square Park has been receiving what the city calls its enhanced outreach model, which involves bringing health and social services to individuals living in the park, along with daily debris removal.
There are a lot of people experiencing homelessness, and I think that everyone unhoused should have a place to sleep. So I hope there's more supports for people.
In a statement to CBC Toronto, Spadina Fort York councillor Osman Malik writes in part, "My commitment is to work with city staff to shelter all those in the park for lasting results that ensure the park is a place for everyone in our community to enjoy." Malik says she shares the concerns about safety and access to the green space. The encampment has shrunk significantly compared to last fall when this footage was taken. The city says since the start of the year, 38 people from the encampment have been referred to indoor accommodation and 2 have moved into housing. 12 tents remain at the park. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
We are learning more details tonight about a shooting that left a Toronto police officer seriously injured. It happened early Wednesday evening during an investigation at an apartment complex near Yonge and Eglinton. Greg Ross has the latest.
We've learned that this was a plainclothes police officer who was here to investigate a vehicle suspected of being involved in a number of robberies. Now, we're told that that vehicle was parked somewhere in this apartment complex here behind me, and that several officers waited here for the people connected with that vehicle to come back for it. And when they did, that's when shots were fired. According to police, they apprehended 3 suspects in this apartment complex yesterday evening. One of them pulled out a gun.
During that interaction, one of the suspects shot our officer in the abdomen, and then another officer returned fire.
Toronto Police Association President John Reid says the police officer who was injured in the shooting was rushed to hospital where he remains in stable condition.
It could have been very, very serious. I expect him to make a full recovery. But he's doing well and surrounded by family at this time.
3 suspects fled the scene but were later apprehended by police. CBC News has confirmed that the man who opened fire on police was later arrested at Michael Garron Hospital. Police have identified him as 21-year-old Tibor Organa of Toronto. He's been charged with multiple offenses, including attempted murder. It turns out this wasn't his first brush with the law.
This individual was actually, in fact, on bail as well.
In September of last year, Organa was accused of assault with a weapon, among other things. He is still awaiting trial on those charges.
When we start dealing with individuals that are either repeat offenders or violent criminal offenders, we have to start looking at reassessing how we do that and how bail is or is not granted.
Police have been standing guard outside of a unit on the 7th floor of this building all day. Multiple residents have told us they're not sure if Organa lives there, but they see him here often. This resident didn't want to appear on camera out of fear for his safety.
Him and his girlfriend or partner or whatever the case may be, like kind of cluttery stuff on the balcony, and like throughout the building just being disorderly.
Now, there were two other suspects who were arrested in connection with this shooting here yesterday. A 22-year-old Amanda Odette, she's been charged with conspiracy to commit an indictable offense. There was also a 15-year-old who was charged in connection with this. He's been charged with 3 counts of robbery and 3 counts of conspiracy to commit an indictable offense. As for the officer who was shot here yesterday, we're told that he is 29 years old with 5 years on the job working with 53 Division's Major Crimes Unit. Kelda?
All right, thanks so much, Greg. Our Greg Ross at Yonge and Eglinton tonight. A 13-year-old boy has been charged with first-degree murder after a fatal stabbing earlier this week. It happened on Tuesday near Jane and St. Clair just after midnight. Police say a 54-year-old man was found in a parking lot suffering from stab wounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The boy was arrested and had his first court appearance this morning. His identity cannot be released under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. Toronto Police and Crime Stoppers have announced a $5,000 reward for information in the shooting death of Amir Narain, his family giving an emotional plea today.
This is about putting Amir to rest in peace and finding justice for Amir. But with how he was left to die, so disgusting, so horrible. Only you guys know his last words.
Police say the 21-year-old was shot after an altercation in September 2019. He then got into his car with 2 unidentified men and one of his friends who was also shot but survived. His friend was dropped off in the Mount Olive area and Narain's car was driven to a plaza parking lot on Kipling Avenue. Surveillance video captured the 2 men getting out of his car, leaving him to die in the back seat. Police say Narain's friend has yet to provide a statement to police, and the identity of the 2 suspects and the location of the shooting remain unknown. A 33-year-old man has been charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder in the deaths of 2 women in Curtis earlier this week. We're also learning the identities of the women who were killed. Durham police say the accused, Michael Bell, who is the ex-boyfriend of 30-year-old Katrina Zielinski, who was found dead along with her 67-year-old Lori Crew at the home east of Oshawa on Tuesday. A child was also found at the home unharmed. Police say the accused is the father of the child. Closing arguments are underway in the sexual assault trial of Canadian musician and former Headley frontman Jacob Hogarth. The Crown and defense agree that a sexual encounter took place in Hogarth's hotel room after a 2016 concert in northeastern Ontario, but prosecutors have been seeking to prove it was not consensual. Both Hogarth and his accuser have testified at the trial. Thomas Dagla is covering the proceedings and has the latest. But first, a warning that some of the details are disturbing.
Hogarth's defense lawyer Megan Savard reminded the jury today that it's up to Crown prosecutors to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this sexual encounter in 2016 amounted to sexual assault, meaning that it was non-consensual. The jury heard Hogarth himself testify from the witness box this week, and his lawyer essentially told the jurors today that if you believe his version of events, if it has planted doubt in your mind about what the complainant describes as rape, then that's it. In the lawyer's words, if you believe him, you must acquit him. Then she went on to repeat to the jury that Hogarth denies wrongdoing. Word for word, here's what Savard told the jury today. Jacob Hogarth did not sexually assault the complainant. He did not rape her. He did not touch her without her consent. It's worth underlining here that the accusation at the heart of this trial is that the woman was 19 at the time. She testified that in that motel room in Kirkland Lake, Ontario, Hogarth choked, slapped, and raped her. He denies that. Crown Attorney Peter Keane has gone through many details this afternoon that the defense zeroed in on when the complainant was being cross-examined and then during Hogarth's testimony. Details about the timeline, inconsistencies that led the defense to tell the jury that the woman's story was partially made up. In fact, the defense suggested to the jury that the complainant has been telling people that this was a non-consensual sexual encounter because she was embarrassed about it and didn't want her boyfriend at the time to find out that she'd had a one-night stand with someone else. This afternoon, the Crown Attorney dismissed that theory, asking the jury this. Does that argument that she fabricated to protect a relationship with her boyfriend make any sense? Does it make any sense that she continues that fabrication here in court in 2024, 3 years after that relationship ended? It's going to be up to the jury to decide whether Hogarth will be found guilty or not on one count of sexual assault. He, of course, has pleaded not guilty.
For the first time in more than 50 years, there's been a fatal rabies case in Canada. A child from the Brantford area has died, according to the local medical officer of health. The child was exposed to a bat north of Sudbury. Health officials say they woke up to the bat in their room, but their parents didn't see any signs of bites, scratches, or saliva, and they didn't seek a vaccine. No other details, including the child's age, have been released. It is the first domestically acquired case of human rabies in Ontario since 1967. Welcome back. The province is finally releasing details of its 95-year lease with Therma Canada, the spa slated to be built where Ontario Place used to sit. They come more than 2 years after the lease was signed and follows questions about the secrecy of the deal and the costs. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redekop has more on what we're learning.
Tree removals are now underway at Ontario Place. Remains of the water park closed more than 10 years ago still evident. Now, the province released details of its lease for a new water park and spa, along with new mock-up designs. The lease to Therma Canada is for 75 years, with an optional 20-year renewal. Along with the wellness site and water park, it's required to provide 16 acres of public park space that the company will spend $200 million on.
No part of Ontario Place will be a casino, a shopping mall, or a condominium. And government will have no capital contribution to the tenant development.
However, the province will be paying for the parking garage. According to the lease, it's a minimum 1,800 parking spaces. The province is proposing more, 2,500, with 1,600 of those spots reserved for Therma. If the province can't get it built in time, it has to pay the company more than $2 million a year. Infrastructure Ontario couldn't provide a cost for the parking facility and couldn't even say if it'll be above ground or below.
Those conversations continue between governments, and no, we haven't landed on a final option yet.
Also in the lease, the province can decide to end it early, after 10 years, but must give 5 years' notice.
I mean, this is outrageous. We are locked in to this deal, and we don't get much benefit from it. I mean, where is the public benefit?
This is a great deal for Therme. It's not, in my opinion, a great deal for taxpayers.
His group has long opposed this deal and the tree removals. Today, protesters could be seen outside the site.
So we have trees there that were survivors, that were helping us with climate change, that have now been obliterated completely. The entire island is completely obliterated to make space for this Austrian mega spa.
Infrastructure Ontario provided more information about why those trees are being chopped down now.
It is taking place now at the start of October because we know that the species at risk, which we were concerned about, birds and bats, are no longer in their nesting season.
And he says all the trees will be replaced at 2-to-1 or 6-to-1 for mature trees. Ontario Place for All is still holding out hopes of stopping the project, trying to do it before the large building goes up. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
A city councillor is raising questions about the large number of drivers who are getting their parking tickets thrown out on the grounds of financial hardship.
To make sure that people are operating safely, there both has to be enforcement and a consequence. And I'm really concerned about that.
Stephen Holliday says the city tribunal that hears parking ticket appeals is letting about 40% of offenders off the hook. And he's worried about what could happen in December when the tribunal starts hearing more serious cases like speeding and running the red light. The city says drivers must prove financial hardship or provide some medical document before they're granted a break on their tickets. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown has announced the city will advocate to treat more people with brain injuries, mental illness, and severe addictions against their will. It's a controversial call to action that would require legislative changes. Chris Glover has the details.
Here in Brampton, Mayor Patrick Brown has put forward a controversial idea. He wants the province to change the Mental Health Act in a pilot project to allow municipalities like Brampton to be able to force people into treatment if they're struggling with severe addiction issues, mental health issues, or brain injuries. He would want to empower first responders to place people in psychiatric facilities, but only if deemed necessary by a doctor. And Patrick Brown says that the need for all of this is quite clear when you look at the streets of Brampton, the homelessness issue, the encampment issue, and also the number of opioid deaths as well. He pointed out that in Brampton since 2010, mental health ER visits have surged by 121%. And he also pointed out that in Peel region in the last 5 years, 705 people have died from the toxic drug supply. Brown says that the current voluntary treatment model is not working, and so he's looking to British Columbia as a model. Now, BC just last month implemented a similar program of involuntary treatment programs, and Brown says he wants that here in Ontario and here in Brampton. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association has raised some concerns with all of this, saying it might infringe on people's rights and it also may be unconstitutional. I put that to Patrick Brown along with one of the councillors here in Brampton, and here's what they had to say.
Well, certainly what has been presented in BC could be tested in the courts, and I think there is an indication that it will. But we simply can't accept hundreds and hundreds of preventable fatalities. And, you know, we've obviously been doing extensive consultation on this with those that are working in this space. And, you know, one response I was given is if someone's in the midst of a heart attack and is not able to explain they need to go to the hospital, you're still taking them to the hospital for treatment. And, you know, there are individuals who are on the verge of a fatality that desperately need treatment. And, you know, as a society, are we going to allow more and more of these preventable fatalities?
This treatment should be seen as a last resort, used only when an individual poses a serious threat to themselves or others and when less intrusive measures have been completely exhausted. Respect for human dignity is paramount. Compassionate intervention should focus on rehabilitation and reintegration rather than punishment or control.
In order for this change to go ahead, the Ontario government would have to make a change to the Mental Health Act. And I reached out to the province today for a statement. They said that their priority remains connecting people who want treatment with the care that they need. Yet yesterday, Doug Ford had this to say.
We're looking at it. I know my minister, Michael Tabolo, is a big fan of it. But we have to look into it pretty deep. So I'm always open to any idea.
So it's still unclear what the Ontario Premier will do about all this, given the fact that there are concerns, as I mentioned, that this might infringe on people's rights. There's also concerns about forced institutionalization, rounding people up and putting them into facilities, even if they are mental health facilities deemed necessary by a doctor. A psychiatrist that we talked to today from CAMH certainly had concerns about its effectiveness.
I think this solution is a little bit too simple. These are complex issues and they require, unfortunately, complex solutions. And simply turning around and saying we wave our legislative wand and put people in treatment against their will and poof, everything works out. It just doesn't work like that, I'm afraid.
And he says that involuntary treatment already does exist in very extreme cases in Ontario and across the country. When people, for example, can't eat, can't drink, can't sleep, a doctor can intervene in those cases. And that psychiatrist was also saying better than having an involuntary treatment system, build up the mental health resources that Ontario currently has and have more mental health beds, for example. These are certainly ideas that the provincial government are looking into, and it'll be fascinating and important to watch which direction the province goes in. Chris Glover, CBC News, Brampton.
All right, Colette, not quite sweater weather yet, but maybe in a few days.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Kelda. We are moving in that direction. And one of the things that will aid and assist us in getting there is the jet stream, all right? So those strong winds in the upper atmosphere, they can denote, to the north, the cooler temperatures, to the south, the warmer temperatures, but also they can be the driving force pushing systems across the continent. And in the last few days, we've had a more what we call zonal flow. So it was more of a straight line kind of from west to east. And what we've got here is a trough beginning to develop well to the west of us, but that is going to deepen and continue moving east. And so really this is for the beginning of next week. We go into a new pattern where it's going to be more just like it kind of should be for this time of year, as opposed to readings like this, where our daytime highs were running, well, we should normally be at about 17 for Toronto, and we're at 23. So a good 5-6 degrees above seasonal. Slightly cooler in Kingston, that's just with the breeze off the lake, and a decent day there in southwestern Ontario as well. It's a decent start to the day tomorrow. Sunshine all the way from the Ottawa Valley, maybe at least for the early morning in southwestern Ontario. But then we have this weak cold front that's going to come in. As it does, it brings increasing cloudiness for the GTA. That's more so into the afternoon hours, and the slight chance of a passing shower, what would be light in nature, all right? So as that goes through, the winds might kick up a little bit too, but you might have that stray shower. And then once it's through, as we go into Friday night and Saturday, we are talking about clearing skies. So Saturday, a nice day, slightly cooler behind that front. And then Sunday, the next system comes in, and that's going to be the real change maker. With that one Sunday, cloudiness, showers, maybe even a few thunderstorms coming our way. So the winds perhaps getting a little bit gusty, and as we go Friday night into Saturday, that's when the cooler air filters in. So even on Saturday, the temperatures are closer to seasonal, but then they bump back up on Sunday. So it's next week where it becomes a more consistent pattern with the temperatures closer to seasonal. Overnight readings tonight, yes, again, some single digits, and yes, again, some areas where we could have some fog. We certainly had that in eastern Ontario in the Ottawa Valley with some areas with some advisories because of dense fog this morning. Overnight 10 degrees, 24 tomorrow. If you forget your umbrella, I think you'll probably still be okay in terms of how light those showers will be. 18 on Saturday, mostly sunny. There you go, Sunday. And then just to give you an idea, next week what we're talking about, Kelda, with those readings.
Yeah, dipping down. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.